Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Industry Careers for PhDs podcast. I'm your host, Isaiah Henkel, and today we're going to be talking about becoming an industry research scientist. And we're going to treat this as a case study. We'll be talking with Vadim Khaychuk. Great guy, came out of the Boston area, transitioned from academia into industry, did a postdoc in the Boston area, got a job at Sanofi Pasteur as a research scientist, was very successful there, and has already climbed the ranks and gone on to become a medical science liaison at Bristol Myers Squibb. Today we're going to be talking about specifically his experience transitioning from that postdoc position into that research scientist position. We're going to talk about the differences between working as a research scientist in academia versus industry. And the great thing about this podcast is we interviewed Vadim right after he transitioned. So you're going to get to hear what it's like how quickly the transition process happens once you get a referral, what to do once you get a referral, right? A lot of people talk about getting referrals at networking events, but what to actually do, how the interview process works, how negotiation works, what you're going to be expected to do once you get that job and how the job is different, right? What the first few months on the job as an industry research scientist looks like. So lots of great information. If you like what you hear today, make sure that you sign up for the Cheeky Scientist Association waitlist, where you'll get the complete version of all of these interviews, plus hundreds of other interviews, documents, training materials, and access to our private network. If you want these shorter interviews and our blog articles delivered to your inbox, just go to our website at cheekyscientist.com and sign up in the top right-hand corner. So we're going to jump right into our interview with Vadim.
Okay, well, it's been an exciting few months for you. Just off the bat, before we get into, the questions that the people listening asked, maybe you can just tell us a little bit about, maybe some of the feelings you've had or how fast it's gone. Like, what's it been like since you literally just transitioned into industry?
I basically jumped right in. I work at Sanofi viral immunology department. I do basic research for development of novel vaccines. And it is slightly different from what I was doing before, where I was working on viral vector development and prion research, actually, between my two postdocs. But it is very, very different from being an academic postdoc.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's been going, and we can hear you really well now. So thanks. If you could keep talking like that, that's awesome. So what would you say are some of the differences? I'm just going to go off topic a little bit. We'll get to the questions that the people wrote in about. But I'm really interested because it's happened so recently for you. What was it like? What are the big differences? So when you show up to work, like for your average day, like what does your kind of average day look like towards the end of your postdoc, and what does your average day look like now? Whether it's more meetings and such. Maybe you could just talk about that briefly.
Structure and research dynamics. That's the biggest difference, I would say. Um, in an academic postdoc, things go, you show up when you feel like, essentially, or at least what it was like. You get in before 11 o'clock, you try to get an experiment here and there, but you're moving towards a goal that's essentially oriented towards you and you alone. Here, you're working in a team. That's very important that you can communicate, that you have the ability to work with this team and to meet certain deadlines. So you come in. Most people get into work by 8:30, 9 a.m. And you settle in and you start working through your schedule. Everything is, as I said, everything is structured. So you kind of know what you have to do for the week. You have a meeting almost every day to discuss a certain topic. You discuss collaborations with either other companies or with academic labs. Um, and yeah, and here and there you get the coffee break.
Yeah, so it moves. I guess overall it moves much faster. It's much more team oriented, and you are. I mean, you're basically scheduling things in between different types of meetings. Correct?
That is correct. Yeah.
Uh, I mean, as far as for personally for you, what has been the most enjoyable part of the transition process now? Now that it's happened.
Working, I guess, what would I say, working on the other side, right? Um, the way research is done, basically there's almost no limits to if you can think of something to do and you can justify it, the the financial means are there to do the experiment. Obviously, you have to have logical explanation for why you would do something like it, but you are, you are very much open to experiment, which is great. Now again, there are key deadlines, and there's really important projects that come first. These are the priorities, which is slightly different. As most of you might know, in an academic lab, you try something, you go try something else, you start ordering stuff, and you just keep going back and forth until you just hit on something to work. Here you really have a direction.
Yeah, and I like that you brought that up. So, the takeaway there for you guys listening is in academia, you're working on things yourself. It's a lot more troubleshooting, a lot more independently driven, which can be good. But in industry, you have a clear direction. And so my next question, Vadim, just going off of that, because I think it's really interesting to a lot of people that haven't experienced it yet, where does that direction come from? Like, how does it work for you? Do you go to a meeting? Do you have a direct supervisor? Like, as a research scientist, maybe you can talk about the chain of command and how things work, so to speak.
Like you mentioned earlier, this is just the beginning for me, but there is a hierarchy. There's definitely a built-in hierarchy that gets passed down from director to deputy director to manager and to scientist. And it goes in a stepwise manner in how these meetings go to dictate what and who is going to do the actual work. Now, the directors get together, they meet, they share the information, and like in our research department, there's many different groups that work on many different specific fields. So if we have a certain problem, for example, like I said, I'm in viral immunology, and we have a lot of protein purification. So there's a group that works right next to us that's protein biochemistry. So if we have any type of problems, usually you schedule a meeting to get together with that team, discuss the issues, and they will come back to you within a few days to a week to troubleshoot what problems you might be confronting.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point for you guys listening, because and I'm going to summarize here what you're saying, Vadim, but in academia, you go, whether it's a week or whatever else it is, then you meet with your supervisor, you have a lab meeting, maybe you have some kind of joint lab meeting, where you share results with other people and you get advice from them. But the nice thing about industry is you have multiple different departments, like the dean just said, departments working right next to them. And when you come across a problem, like that same day, you can book in a meeting. The meeting might not happen that same day, but you can book a meeting in, and you can get the help you need. And do you enjoy that part, Vadim? I mean, has this made you move faster in terms of your research?
I think it's great. I think your understanding, when you have somebody to actually to talk to resolve your problem, it's slightly different from, you still have to do the research, you still have to go through the literature to find out what the problem might be. But you have experts on hand, literally sitting right next to you that can help you.
Is that one of the advantages to working in industry, is that you get to have experts at your fingertips. It is much more team-oriented. It is much more directed. There's not, it's, in terms of getting stuff done, you actually will get more done. And the work that you do will happen faster and be better because you get top-of-the-line equipment. And I love that the team brought that up because a lot of people don't think about it. In academia, even if you're in the best parts of, even if you're at, at Harvard or wherever it might be that has top-of-the-line equipment, lots of funding, you'll still get in labs where things are really old. They've been using instruments for 20 years. And to have top-of-the-line stuff, to have 3 extra of the exact same instrument just in case you need it, really, really matters. And I think that's important. So, if you guys enjoy, the overall message here is that if you enjoy research, don't stop doing it just because you've had a bad experience in academia. You need to really evaluate whether or not you want to move away from the bench because you don't enjoy bench work, or if it's because you just didn't have a good experience in the lab that you're in. Maybe you had a difficult PI. maybe you didn't have a lot of direction, maybe you didn't have a lot of support, maybe you had crappy equipment, not a lot of funding. If these are the reasons that you had a bad experience, they're not going to be the same things that are, they're not going to be present when you move into industry. So I'm really glad you brought that up. So going back to about making that transition, Vadim, what, from the process, since you're fresh out of it, maybe you could talk to us a little bit about how the process worked for you. Like what, you sent your resume off? Like, talk to us exactly, what are the steps that got you this job? Did you send your resume first? Was it through a referral? Did you go to networking events? And then you got an interview? Maybe talk a little bit about that.
One word, networking. That made all the difference in the world. Actually, I will tell you that what really kicked me in the butt was when you came to present at Harvard Medical School. After that seminar that I sat through, it kind of opened my eyes. It opened the way, it opened the approach. Beforehand, it was really just sending off applications through LinkedIn, through the company's websites, through whatever means I could get my CV out there. And I wasn't really getting much of a response. The initial response was one of two answers. Either you're overqualified for the position, or you don't have any industry experience whatsoever for you to take this position. So what turned it was actually networking. I basically went through every networking event that was taking place between Boston and Cambridge. And it was actually a friend who was also looking for a job that didn't quite fit this position, passed my CV on to the hiring manager. And it happened almost overnight. Once my CV went past their HR department and into an actual hiring manager who was part of the team that I work with now, the process took 2 weeks. It was really fast.
Yes. I love that. So are you guys listening to this? Like, how many people have we had on that have said that everything comes down to networking? And a lot of you guys keep asking questions that make no sense at all because you aren't asking the right questions. You're asking questions still about resumes, CVs, right? You guys have been in the group for quite a while now. And for those of you that don't have a job, but you're still asking about resumes, CVs, you're still worried about interviews, whatever, it all starts with networking. You have to get out there. It's not like you're going to go to one, it's not like you're missing out on the one event. That's the reason that networking is not working for you. It's because you're not consistently going to networking events. It's because you're not consistently following up and meeting new people on LinkedIn like every single day. And so if you're not getting a job, you have to put in that kind of effort. And if there's, a lot of people are like, oh, there's no good, I think one of you just said, what about Portland, right? Well, Portland's a big city. There are networking events there. You got to get on Meetup. You got to sniff them out. And if you can't find one, guess what? You can host your own. Have you ever invited anybody to your university? Have you ever set up your own networking event? You can do this very easily. So you can bring cheeky scientists out to your university, to wherever you're at, to have a networking event or to have a speaking event. You can bring other speakers, other recruiters out. You can contact recruiters directly, see if they'll come out for an event. You can look at your university or wherever you are for funding to bring people out. It just takes initiative. It takes a little bit of daily effort. It's not as hard as you think. So start thinking outside the box. Start putting together your own events and start really digging in to networking because it all happens there. We're gonna drive home this point. Maybe you could talk a little bit about any changes you might have made to your resume, or if that didn't matter, how the interview went, what kind of questions they asked, any insight there?
Basically, the first interview was a phone interview, and the company reached out to me. The hiring manager reached out and sent me the list of responsibilities and things that you'd be responsible for while working in this position. They gave me a few days to review it, and then they said, just ask me for a particular time when we could speak over the phone. When the first phone call was made, the first questions were asked are you comfortable with the responsibilities that will be asked of you? Can you perform those tasks? This, again, because this is research, a lot of the techniques, a lot of the skills that they were asking were completely transferable from what I was doing before. It was really easy to change.
Like what?
Well, for example, cell culture and virology work I was working in viral vector development before, and in this case, instead of viral vector developing, I switched into vaccine development. The concepts of making making a virus in cell culture is the same. I mean, you're using the same transfections, you're using the same molecular techniques to characterize what you're making. It's just a different question that's being asked. That's all.
Yes.
So,
What were some of the skills that were there any skills that were a little bit different? I mean, how important were, like interpersonal skills during the interview, during the call?
very, very important. One of the first things they asked me was, "Are you comfortable with presenting in front of other people? Are you comfortable in sharing your ideas in meetings?" They were basically digging it to the point of asking, "Was I willing to speak up?" And looking at how confident I was with the work that I'd be doing.
Yeah, absolutely. So, two things, two takeaways there, guys. One thing that they want to know, like, it's not about proving your hard skills in the way that you think you'd have to. I mean, basically, you have the experience to do these especially for a research scientist position. You either have the skills to do the bench work that's required, right? To do the types of experiments that are required, or you have the skills to learn how to do the experiments. But as far as the soft skills, that's two things that they're going to want to figure out. I mean, are you able to handle responsibility? Do you handle responsibility, or do you put it off on everybody else? And a lot of academics struggle with this because it's kind of built into the academic system in the way that you communicate. Like when you're talking about your results, you never talk about your results, you say our results suggest, right? It's very different in industry. Like, you need to be able to take responsibility, and you're accountable for what you need to get done. You're accountable you work with a team, but you're accountable to yourself, to your data, to your results. So are you willing to take that responsibility? Are you willing to hold yourself accountable? That's what they want to see. The second thing is, are you going to speak up? Are you going to be a wallflower and not talk at all? It doesn't matter how good you are at bench work. If you have golden hands, if you're not going to speak up, if you can't present, if you can't stand up in a meeting and assert yourself, they're not going to want you in industry. So those two things, again, responsibility and communication skills, really, really important.
One of the biggest questions, actually, one of the first questions that they asked me when I came in for the interview: "Why do you want to leave academia?"
Yes, I'm so glad you brought that up. That was the same question I got too. What did you say?
I wanted to see what the other side was like. I know what academia is like. I know I want to work in a more structured environment. I want to work in a team. I want I want to be able to actually make a difference. And from what I was doing in academia, wasn't really doing it for me. So they really, the key was to show that you were really confident in making this transition. But it wasn't like something you kind of just dabbling with.
That's a crucial point. I'm so glad you brought that. I'm so glad you brought that up, you guys, because I don't think we've covered that yet this year. And he brought up a lot of key takeaways here. One, they want to know that you're confident. Just in general, they want to know that you're confident. They especially want to know that you're confident in your decision to take a job, because it costs, I think the last numbers that I saw is it costs between $40,000 and $60,000 USD to take on a new employee to a company. Right? Because there's a lot of expenses that go into it. The whole onboarding process, the man hours of interviewing, HR work, processing paperwork, the training, all the stuff, $40,000 to $60,000. So one of the number one things you're going to want to know is, are you sure that you want to make this transition and you're not going to work for them for 2 months and then go back to academia or not be able to do it? So have your story straight about why you're leaving academia, and don't. And when I say story, I mean like the real story. I mean, make up one. Just do exactly what Vadim did. And this correlates to everything that the recruiters we've interviewed have said too. Just be transparent. Vadim said, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to try something new. I'm ready for something new. He didn't make up a story about, having industry experience when he didn't have it. He didn't make up a story about doing some sort of internship that gave him insights to industry. He said, I've never done this before. I know what it's about. I'm ready for something new. I'm confident in this decision. And that's all that you guys have to do too. We had a good question here from Rebecca. Said, Vadim, what does your career trajectory look like for the next 10 years? Are you planning on, and of course, I know you just started, but as far as what you can see, do you plan on staying in research, management? What does it look like?
I would love to stay. I would love to continue to become a director. That's obviously that is the most obvious trajectory.
Yes.
But that doesn't happen for everyone. Whether I remain in a large company is one thing. I would not opposed to working with a small startup as well. I think the curiosity and the amount of research done in a small startup is a little bit, it's different. It's different because we actually interact with a lot of small companies that come in and present their work, so we could potentially be involved with them. I think it's really cool. In short, I would like to stay in research. Yeah.
One other question that we got was, how do you look at non-traditional academic training for entry-level scientist positions at R&D? So I guess if you were looking for, to be a research scientist in immunology or biology, how do candidates with degrees in biochemistry or chemical engineering get those positions? So was your degree in what you're working, the project that you're working on now, right? Are you working directly? Is your current work directly related to what you're doing in your postdoc, for example, or for your thesis?
No, it's not. It's very different. My PhD thesis was in prion biology. It was researching proteinaceous infectious agents that don't have any nucleic acids, which is it's a field in microbiology, neurodegeneration, infectious neurodegeneration. From there, I moved on to gene therapy, which is viral vector development. It's actually making viruses to deliver genetic information. At this point, I am on the other side looking at and working in the field of virology and immunology, actually, developing reverse engineering viruses. It's like I said, the techniques, the skills. If you're a molecular biologist or a biochemist and you have these skills, it doesn't matter as long as you understand what your question is being asked. You should be able to perform it. So I guess if you have a clear understanding, you will fit the position just the same as if somebody coming out that's a pure virologist working in this field. It's in my personal view, the definition of a virologist, a molecular biologist, even a molecular immunologist, you're working with the same tools, just asking different questions.
Exactly, and we talk about this a lot, right? You guys, I mean, you have a PhD. It's basically a doctorate in knowledge, a doctorate in learning. So learning different techniques and whatever else, it's not that big of it's not like if you didn't get your PhD in immunology, you can't work in immunology. If you didn't get your PhD in virology, you can clearly, just like you can start doing a postdoc in something totally different. You can take a job in something totally different. It's just if they're looking for specific skill sets, like if you're looking for specific instrumentation experience, like if you work on specific instruments, we talked about that when you're doing your resumes for recruiters, that kind of stuff can matter. But it doesn't mean that it can keep you from the job. So it's not a huge factor. And like Vadim said, there aren't a lot of huge factors that will keep you from the job except for yourself. Even if Vadim said, he didn't have industry experience. He didn't have the specific experience that he's working on now, but he just got the job. So all these limiting beliefs you guys have isn't, they're not going to hold you back. So did you say you did a phone call first, Vadim?
Right. That's right.
And how long did that phone call last?
It was about an hour.
Okay, and then you had a live interview?
That's right.
With how many people?
3 people altogether. But it was 3 people in my case because this was beginning of December, or actually this was 1 week before Thanksgiving. They hired me first week of December. There was not that many people around in the company. That's why it was reduced. But I basically went through the hierarchy of individuals that I'd be working with, starting from the director to the deputy director and to the hiring manager, also the manager involved in the work.
Okay, great. So there was 3 people there, and did they all kind of like tag team you questions, or maybe can you remember what it looked like? How did you prepare too? What did you do specifically to prepare for the live interview?
Well, I reviewed the work. I went through the responsibilities. When they sent me the description of the job, um, I went over everything. I knew kind of what they were doing, and basically, before they started asking me questions, I asked them, what exactly is the project? What do you work on? So, I understand the skills you want, but what is the project that you are working on? And that kind of led to the conversation of what are your skills and how are they applicable to this? And I just compared essentially step by step what I was doing to how this would apply to the project that they're working on.
Oh, great. Yes, and this is something similar to what we've heard in the past during other webinars, guys, is that they're gonna put you in, you know, specific kind of just mock scenarios, and they won't be that tough, but they kind of just want to see if you're able to think on your feet. They'll say, okay, imagine this happens, what would you do in this specific situation? Or imagine this happens, what would you do in that specific situation? And then you need to talk about, just like you did doing your thesis defense, just like you do, when people you have to give a seminar and people ask questions. So just apply the skills that you have, or one great strategy is to, if you had a similar problem in the past, explain how you got out of that one in the lab, or how I should say how you solved it, and just show your problem-solving abilities. Because they want those key trends, right? They're not looking for the specific answers. They're not looking for you to specifically identify a protein, for example. They just want to know that you display confidence and decisiveness. They want to know that you are willing to assert yourself, that you have communication skills. They want to know that you can think on your feet. They want to know that you understand the questions they're asking, that they want to know that you know how to solve a problem, that you know how to resolve conflict, these kind of things. So if you can telling a story about a past time in the lab where you solved a problem goes a long way. And so I think that is a really good key takeaway here. We had a bunch of questions about comparing R&D position to a postdoc position. So Vadim, and you're the perfect person to ask this to because you've done both and you've done multiple postdocs. So how does an entry-level R&D position compare to starting a new postdoc or your first postdoc, as an example?
Well, I think as you're starting a postdoc, as most of you might know, you're kind of expected that you know pretty much everything in an academic setting. You are an example of what the graduate students will be learning from. You really have to lead. Starting as an entry-level scientist in a large company, you have to be able to know when to listen. You have to accept the fact that you don't know everything, because you in an academic postdoc, you essentially, for the most part, will be working by yourself. You'll be given a project that it's for you to tackle. Right away, as I started working in the company, I was first introduced to the team, and I was informed of, here's how you and the team are going to solve this problem or try to address whatever the research question might be. I think that's the biggest thing. And you're at the very bottom of that hierarchy that I kept saying. So a lot of the tasks, the menial tasks that might be required, even from a PhD, it kind of falls on you to do them. But people are not above, even deputy directors will go in the lab and work as well, which I didn't expect, but it kind of blew me away. That even
Really?
at the most senior level, people will still go in the lab to do something. Just the pure curiosity and joy that they get of working in a lab.
We appreciate you being on today, Vadim. That's all the questions we have time for right now, everyone. So take the rest of your questions into the Facebook group. We'll put Vadim in the group so he can respond to them and stay in touch and keep you up to date with his successes as he moves on up the chain of command to manager. and we'll be rooting for you along the way.
Thank you so much. Actually, thank you, Isaiah. I told you several times. I'm very grateful for your encouraging suggestions. It helped a lot. I'm not gonna. I'm gonna say it like it is.
And well, thank you, Vadim. I mean, I want to say thank you to you too. You were an inspiration, and like I told you when we met, I knew that this would happen for you very quickly because the kind of guy you are. So keep it up. Thanks for coming back to inspire other postdocs and PhDs. I look forward to seeing you be more and more successful.
Thank you.
Talk to you soon.
Yep. Thank you, Isaiah.
All right.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Industry Careers for PhDs podcast. I'm your host, Isaiah Henkel, and today we were talking with Vadim Khaychuk about transitioning into an industry research scientist role. If you want to get the extended version of this and access to all of our interviews, be able to join us for our live interviews that we do, as well as all of our training materials, make sure that you sign up for the Cheeky Scientist Association waitlist, which will be opening soon. That's at cheekyscientist.com/association. If you want these shorter versions and our blog articles delivered to your inbox every day, you can just go to our website at cheekyscientist.com and sign up in the upper right-hand corner. Until next time, remember your value as a PhD and start thinking and acting like a successful industry professional.